Hi, welcome to another episode. Please share, like, and subscribe. Now let's dive in. Israeli troops have been photographed setting up pumps to flood Hamas's tunnels with seawater. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, released images on Wednesday of dozens of soldiers laying pipes on Gaza's Mediterranean coast. It was reported earlier this week that the IDF was considering whether to flush out the 300-mile tunnel network and had completed construction on 5 pumps about a mile north of the Al-Shadi refugee camp. The pumps could move thousands of cubic meters of water per hour, but experts warn the move could damage Gaza's water supply. Lieutenant General Herzi Halavi, the IDF Chief of Staff, said on Tuesday that flooding the tunnels was a good idea when asked about the reports. Any means which gives us an advantage over the enemy, deprives it of these assets, is a means that we are evaluating using, he said, without giving any further specifics. On Wednesday, Israeli media also released footage of troops working on the pipes underground, with black pipes swelling with water after a valve was turned. Any move to flood the tunnels is complicated by the fact that Hamas is understood to be holding many of the remaining 138 hostages within them. On Tuesday night, freed hostages and their families berated Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, for not doing enough to save Hamas captives, according to a recording obtained. Prof. Ilon Adar, of the Zuckerberg Institute for Water Research, said the amount of damage to Gaza's water supply could be significant. The negative impact on groundwater quality would last for several generations, depending on the amount that infiltrates into the subsurface, he told the Times of Israel, adding the long-term effects would be politically and morally incorrect. On Wednesday, Mr. Netanyahu said Israeli troops had surrounded the house of Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind of the October 7 terror attack in the main southern city of Khan Yunis. On Tuesday night, I said our forces can reach anywhere in the Gaza Strip. Now they are surrounding Sinwar's house. His house is not his fortress, but it's only a matter of time until we get him, Mr. Netanyahu said on Wednesday during a meeting with the head of the Red Cross. Responding to Mr. Netanyahu's remarks, Daniel Hagari, the IDF's chief spokesperson, said Sinwar was underground. I won't elaborate on where exactly and what we know. Our job is to get to Sinwar and kill him. The IDF destroyed Sinwar's house in the last bout of fighting in 2021, with the Hamas leader later posing for photos sitting on an armchair in the rubble. Israeli forces were fighting door-to-door in Khan Yunis on Wednesday, with the army claiming it had struck 250 targets in the Strip. Troops found one of the largest ever weapons caches in the Gaza Strip, the IDF said. Hundreds of RPG and dozens of anti-tank missiles were found in a depot near a health clinic and a school, a statement read. Footage was released of soldiers from the 460 Armored Brigade and Nahal Brigade's 50th Battalion carrying giant rockets on their shoulders onto waiting trucks. At a news conference, Volker Turk, the UN human rights chief, said Palestinians in Gaza are living in utter, deepening horror. More than 16,000 have been killed since the war began, according to the Hamas-run health authorities. Alon Levy, an Israeli government spokesman, said Israel wanted the war to end, but added it can only end in a way that ensures that Hamas can never attack our people again. At a private meeting with Mr. Netanyahu, hostages and their families furiously accused the prime minister of putting politics above rescue efforts. Some also said they were inadvertently fired on by the IDF, according to a leaked recording. I was in a hiding place that was shelled, and we had to be smuggled out and we were wounded, a recently freed female hostage said. You claim that there is intelligence, but the fact is that we are being shelled. The leaked recordings reflect the immense anger felt by many Israelis towards Mr. Netanyahu and growing public support for prioritizing the release of the remaining hostages. You put politics above the return of the kidnapped, an unidentified woman told Mr. Netanyahu. Return them all, and not in a month, 2 months, or a year. U.S. President Joe Biden said that Hamas had repeatedly raped women and mutilated their bodies during its assault on southern Israel, citing survivors and witnesses. It is appalling, he told a political fundraiser in Boston. According to Israeli reports citing a doctor who treated hostages, 10 former captives, both male and female, said they had been sexually assaulted after their kidnapping. Israeli environmental experts have called on the defense establishment to carefully weigh the long-term environmental implications of reported plans to flood the immense network of tunnels in the Gaza Strip with seawater to flush the Hamas militants out. Gaza is home to more than 2 million people and is one of the most densely populated places on Earth. The enclave's only sweetwater supply comes from a shallow aquifer running parallel to the Mediterranean coast. That has been so overpumped, and the subterranean water levels have dropped so far that seawater has entered the aquifer and mixed with the little sweet water that remains. The aquifer's water quality has been further eroded by sewage and agricultural chemical runoff, to the extent that 97% of Gaza's fresh water no longer meets World Health Organization (WHO) water quality standards. Even before the war, most Gazans relied on private water tankers and the yield of small desalination plants for drinking water. Following Hamas's storming of South Israel on October 7th, Israel turned off 3 pipelines carrying drinking water into the Strip. Under U.S. pressure, it subsequently reopened 2 of them, and during the recent pause in fighting to release hostages, allowed in more of the fuel needed to pump the water from the Israel-Gaza border into the enclave. Professor Ilan Adar of the Zuckerberg Institute for Water Research at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev in southern Israel said that further potential ecological damage to Gaza's aquifer by flooding the tunnels would depend on the quantity of water and the reach. Stressing that he was neither an expert on the issue nor involved with the Defense Ministry's reported plans, he said that the pumping of a relatively small amount of seawater affecting the area between the Mediterranean coastline and the point where sea and sweet water were mixing anyway would have minimal consequences. That latter point lies anywhere from tens to several hundreds of meters inland from the Gazan shore. But if several million cubic meters were pumped into the tunnels and seeped into the aquifer, the negative impact on groundwater quality would last for several generations, depending on the amount that infiltrates into the subsurface, he said. Israel would hardly feel the effect, he went on, because the coastal aquifer's water flows from Israel to Gaza. Nevertheless, Adar added, he would hesitate about destroying a massive natural resource. As a citizen, despite the disaster that we experienced on October 7, I still think that in the long run, and we have to think of the future, it would be politically and morally incorrect to have a thirsty neighbor, he said. Another water expert, who asked not to be named, said tunnels carved out of porous sand would need to be flooded several times. Some of them were built to bring militants into Israel, he added. If seawater entered those sections, it could salinate Israeli wells close to the Gaza border. Professor Hadas Maman, who heads the environmental engineering program at Tel Aviv University, said the environmental impacts of all options for destroying the tunnels had to be considered, and their effects on the air, water, soil, hydrology, and ecology tested in advance. Thanks for watching, and see you again in another episode of World Formatics.